It is time now, so you're very welcome, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. We are about to start the second day of the Microtone Symposium Small is Beautiful, Mikrotöne Small is Beautiful from Salzburg. I'm really thrilled about all the great presentations we are about to witness today. And so we're going to start the first block of 3 presentations with Mr. Marc Kilchenmann. And I really love the title. I think it fits the best to the philosophy of the symposium. On the Beauty of Small Differences, Ben Johnston's Principle of Variation. Marc Kilchenmann studied bassoon, composition, elementary music pedagogy, and is currently writing a doctoral thesis on the extended just intonation of the American composer Ben Johnston. He's also a co-founder of Art Verlag, this edition, and is responsible for the complete editions of Hermann Mayer, Urs Peter Schneider, and Peter Streiff. Can I ask you, Marc, where are you writing your doctoral thesis?
Well, at University of Bern. Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon. So, in Bern, Switzerland, capital of Switzerland.
Great. Yeah, sorry, I didn't find this.
Oh, sorry, that's a mistake.
No. I found this little information somewhere. Okay, so are we recording? Yes. Okay, just for me, I'm very absent-minded. Okay, so please, Mr. Marc Kilchenmann, you're very welcome for your presentation.
Well, so I have to start. Sorry. 1 second. So, can you see now a PowerPoint presentation?
Yes, very well.
In the right order, or I hope so.
Yes, it's the title, On the Beauty of Small Differences. Well,
very good. Picture. Thank you very much. Well, I'm happy and pleased to speak today about Ben Johnston's principles of variation and the beauty of small differences. But first, I would like to give you a short introduction to Johnston and his extended just intonation. In 1950, no, it's not working. Sorry, I have to redo this. Sorry, I'm not ich bin nicht im Bildschirmmodus. So. That's better. So now
much better.
You see now the second slide.
You're still on the first one. Second.
Now the second. Okay. In 1950, Johnston was Park's apprentice for 6 months and learned to tune the instruments of Park. Nevertheless, it took 10 years thereafter until he began to compose with pure intervals on his own. In 1959, Johnston spent a long time trying to get music out of a monster of a synthesizer, the RCA Mark II, in an expanded, just intonation. Instead of self-made instruments or the use of electronics, Johnston started to compose for conventional instruments. In his theoretical paper, Scalar Order as a Compositional Resource, Johnston explains how the continuous addition and subtraction of pure intervals results in scales that are not constructed in an equidistant manner. On the upper line, we can see the subdivision of the octave in a perfect fourth and a perfect fifth. When we subtract these 2 intervals, we get the just major tone here in the middle. In a second step, Johnston subdivides the fifth into a fourth and the just major tone, and thus again receives a new interval, a Pythagorean minor third, which is a syntonic comma smaller than the just minor third. Now we have two different minor thirds, and this new richness of interval qualities can be described as the main compositional interest of Ben Johnston. I can report from my own experience how enriching this is. I am a composer myself and knew only 2/3 for a long time. Since I'm dealing with just intonation, this became more and more. At the beginning, this rather silenced me as a composer, but now I'm happy to slowly grasp this richness, not only theoretically, but also to write music myself in an extended pure intonation. But back to Ben Johnston. The process to get new intervals by subtracting can be continued, and Johnston can therefore create any fine, non-equidistant subdivision of the octave. Here we see one possible result, a 53-step subdivision of the octave, with 3 smallest intervals of different sizes. It is important to understand that these smallest intervals arise from the combination of larger and more familiar intervals. Because these intervals are easily controllable by ear, the small intervals are therefore not speculative. Now, more than 10 years after joining Parch, Johnston finally had the tools to compose in just intonation, and he really restarted from scratch and used only perfect thirds, fourths, and fifths, a 5 limit. Here we see the beginning of the second string quartet. In this piece, Johnston returns to exactly the 53-step scale that we saw on the previous slide. Fourths and fifths are entered in blue, minor thirds in orange, and major thirds in red. With 3 perfect fifths and a minor third, for example, it ends up a syntonic comma higher than the starting point. Below, you can see the mathematical formula for this process. String quartet number 2 is a good example of how Johnston combined just intonation with various serial techniques. Later he would say of this phase, quote, "I was tired of composing music that was heard only on concerts, attended almost solely by other composers," quote end. This tiredness is well noticeable in the string quartet number 3. Again, the work is based on 12-tone rows, but these are well hidden and mostly only found in fragments. The piece is therefore more reminiscent of a free atonality than of serial music. Over the course of the piece, we can see a great tendency towards more quiet and more silent. This is a synoptic representation of the whole piece. Pauses are shown in orange, general pauses in red. It can be clearly seen how the movement is reduced more and more to 2 voices, and that the general pauses are becoming more frequent. At the end, we can finally find the 12-tone rows of the sketchbook, and this run in a very correct, almost banal way. With the zigzag-like voice leading, it is reminiscent of a textbook on counterpoint. Compared to the complexity otherwise achieved by Johnston, there is something weary about this, as if the dodecaphony only appeared to the composer as an empty shell. After this piece, Johnston got into a serious artistic and personal crisis. Quote, "There is, so to speak, an abyss facing us over which we have somehow to cross. I believe that not only the bridge, which will bear our weight, but also the bridgehead on the opposite rim of the canyon cannot be built without the contributions of artists." Quote end. Johnston was looking for a new artistic language. On the one hand, he subsequently used increasingly higher harmonics up to the 31st partial to form his intervals. On the other hand, he returned more and more to tonal means. Finally, Johnston ended the artistic crisis with a big bang, his most played piece, String Quartet number 4. Despite the difference between string quartet number 3 and number 4, he saw the two pieces as related and asked for them to be played together, separated by a general pause of at least 1 minute. While it is possible for the two quartets to be played as independent pieces, but if the works are brought together, the title should be changed to Crossing, and Johnston describes this as follows, quote, "Crossing is a traverse, a transformation, journey from one lip of a diptych to the other, from one rim of a canyon to the other, from one quartet to another. One is invited to try which pairings the work as perceived will accept. Old world, new world, international style, world music, serial emphasis, proportional emphasis, personal, transpersonal." Quote end. It is noticeable that Johnston uses twice the metaphor of the canyon. This makes string quartet number 4 the piece of the other side of the abyss and with which he leaves his personal crisis behind. As complex as the third string quartet was constructed, as simple is string quartet number 4. It is a classic set of variations on the hymn Amazing Grace. Randall Shinn even speaks of a piece that would be based on a Beethovenian ideal of form, and the piece is kept so simple that Johnston could even dispense with numbering the variations. The following sound sample makes it clear which different musical universes Johnston combines here in a sounding diptych. Amazing Grace begins with a full quotation from the pentatonic hymn in a Pythagorean tuning. Pay particular attention to the B. This is a Pythagorean major third, and with a size of 408 cents, it is much larger than the pure major third. In Johnston's Cosmos, this is a mild dissonance. I have marked these with red. String quartet number 4 has 9 variations, and most of them uses a different pitch system. From the extremely simple Pythagorean tuning to a tricky 22-fold subdivision of the octave with all conceivable references to the 7th partial. In the third variation, Johnston adds the thirds to the Pythagorean scale, dispense with the Pythagorean major third, and thus get a pure major scale. In variation number 5, the tonal material is extended with the intervals formed by the 7th partial. This gives Johnston a 12-step scale, which is clearly different from the pure chromatic scale. Instead, it is more reminiscent of the blues scale. In variation number 6, the previous 12-tone scale is replaced by its U-tonal variant, which means that all intervals of the overtone scale are mirrored downwards. And variation number 7 finally combines the two previous scales, giving Johnston an ultrachromatic scale with 22 steps in the octave. All these different scales are related to one another structurally. The piece always wears the same dress, but Johnston consistently changes the accessoires. In the following string quartet, he refined this principle further. In this work too, he used a familiar melody, this time Lonesome Valley. And we can find 5 complete quotations of the melody in this piece. The theme itself is not varied. To stay in the metaphor, each quotation wears a different dress. I use the term variant for this instead of variation, and we now hear the 5 different beginnings of the theme. Let's have a closer look at 2 of these variants. Number 2 looks simple, but it isn't. In the melody, the A minus is 1 syntonic comma lower than the perfect fifth, and the 2 violins play in parallel thirds throughout, but these appear in 4 different sizes, and only the major third is consonant. The rest are extremely unusual intervals that stand in opposition to the drone of the cello. The 4th variant of the theme deserves special consideration. All tones, both of the cluster and of the melody, are partials of the same fundamental tone, the C minus. The central tone of the melody, however, is the 11th partial tone. This stands in opposition to the keynote, which creates a feeling of lack of reverence. In the middle, both the theme and the accompaniment change into a G minus U tonality. Since the central tone of the melody corresponds to the root note, contrary to expectations, the U tonality sounds brighter than the previous. As a third method of variation, Johnston uses the microtonal alienation of existing forms such as blues and toccata. As an example, I would like to briefly introduce you to the suite for microtonal piano. In this piece, Johnston chose a tone system in the 19th limit with the partials 16 to 32 and thus obtained a chromatic scale with extremely different distances from 63 to 151 cents. The scale can be heard very well, especially in the second movement called blues. The drone in the bass provides a stable orientation. I've marked the partials in the right-hand red, so I'm sure you can follow easily. Johnston has repeatedly faced the Johnston has repeatedly faced the accusation of eclecticism. However, the main motivation was not to copy pieces, but to let them sound in a completely different, so to speak, just way. Perhaps to avoid facing this accusation again, Johnston wrote at the end of his compositional life numerous arrangements of existing pieces. Among them are microtonal versions of various jazz standards. With a few bars from the beginning and from the end of Cole Porter's song, I Concentrate on You in a Certain Limit, arranged by Ben Johnston. I would like to thank you for your attention and look forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Marc. Yeah, great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we enjoyed it a lot, and you're throwing a lot of aspects. And I would like first to ask in the group if anyone has any comments. I'm sure you have, and I will, if there's time, I will keep mine. I will also throw some aspects, some questions, or some comments. So anyone in the group?
Maybe, Marc, I would love to thank you very, very much to take this huge topic, Ben Johnston, up on your mind. It's a wonderful music, and I was a student of Ben Johnston.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, some years ago, and it's really very remarkable aspect you find in the microtonal world. Ben Johnston is very, very specific, and I thank you very much to show at the very end of your talk the huge field of thinking of Ben Johnston in the field of popular music and also in the field of Serbian music. We have had his Quintet for Groups, I think some 10 years ago in Donaueschingen, which was a huge success. And I wish it so very much to Ben that there are more people like you, Marc, who really present his music. And I thank you very, very, very much.
Thank you. That's very kind. Thank you.
Thank you for your excellent presentation. I think variation technique is an excellent subject to study in Johnston's music. But I have a question concerning his harmony. I feel that. Sorry, my dog is getting active. I'm outside in my garden. I think that Johnston is one of the few composers who has made utonality work in a very well, simply work, so that it because utonal harmonies are very complex and tend to sound muddy and not really make sense as or can be they can seldom be perceived as having the just intonation psychoacoustic effects that otonal harmonies do. But Ben Johnston manages to use them in a convincing way. Have you analyzed? Do you have any idea why that is? What is it that makes this happen? And do you agree?
Well, more than one question. First, I see a tendency to avoiding utonal harmonies more and more in his work. So in this suite for microtonal piano, but also in other works, he only uses otonalities. So perhaps that's a first part of an answer. And the second part, Johnston started in a very structural way, and we can see often pieces they go back to this very Schoenbergian thinking, way of thinking. In the sixth string quartet, he's dealing in a row manner, and that's why he's using utonal, but he was not happy with this. So I didn't find any quotation by Johnston against utonal chords, but that they are much more complicated than the other ones. That's clear, and that's clear for him too. But for me, the main thinking by Johnston is he's really a composer. He heard his own music in his head, so it's not music only on the sheet, and that's my fascination about Johnston. And I think by the higher partials, that's why he is avoiding the utonal relations. But it's a cease for the moment. It's not really a result. So
that's interesting to hear that he tended to avoid them in later years. Although, for instance, in the 10th quartet, they do appear.
Well, but not too often.
Yeah, but right. But he uses them in a sense of generalized major minor contrast.
Yeah, so, that's true. Yeah, that's true.
He has these minor sections, and also like in the very beautiful slow movement of the 9th quartet, the Haydn like.
Yeah. Fantastic, yeah.
Perhaps it's perhaps they work in but perhaps he writes them for string quartet in a way that it makes them work better than I don't know. But thank you for your answer. It's very interesting.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. May I add something? It's so very interesting, this discussion about utonality. I have the feeling that Ben's very deep contact with nature and with the universe, with God even, sometimes showed him a way to show the very complex world of otonality, utonality. It could be even hell, utonality, and heaven, otonality. And for example, there are absolutely complex quartets, like the 7th one. If we analyze this, these two worlds are so intermingled, and he somehow showed us a third way, a way maybe from otonality to utonality, So utonality was absolutely deep in his mind. And if we know this person, this complex, this sometimes very dark elements of his thinking, it's somehow very close to his utonality world. It's wonderful, Mark, that you showed us this wonderful O-tonality fourth quartet, but it has its utonality elements. And what is more, what we have to consider, Ben Johnston was absolutely aware of the 19th century and of, for example, Richard Wagner, and let's take the Tristan and the Tristan chord, which is a utonality chord for him. We discussed this a lot. So utonality, this ba-ya-dee, is absolutely present in the 19th century, Schumann and whatever. So it may be a fact of becoming mild in the very late quartets that he is avoiding the hell kind of quality. So you are very right. I don't know your name. Nuorvala is what I see, but this may be not your name. Yeah. So just a little addition to your idea about utonality. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions in the group? Any comments? Any more comments?
It was interesting to hear the tuning system did sound like blues guitar, where you sort of bend the minor third in and out of tune. But I was also interested, does 12-tone music sound different in a sort of Pythagorean scale with unequal semitones as opposed to the equal temperament tuning?
Well, the first sound example was not the best example to show this, to demonstrate this. Johnston wrote about the second string quartet that in the first movement you can't hear the microtonality because it's only in the melodic lines, and the melodic lines are really extremely big intervals. So, but in the second movement, you became aware more and more about this microtonal meanings, and in the second sound sample at the end of the third string quartet, you can hear this very well because he is using the confrontation of enharmonic representations of the same note. So when you have the C and then you have the B plus, so you can really hear the small difference more and more. But at the beginning, it's really hard to hear. So, but I think that was Mr. Stanke can correct me, but I understand Johnston as always as a teacher too. His music has pedagogic elements. So and to make this journey from a so-called normal 12-tone music to a really microtonal music in the second string quartet, I think that's teacher's music. Of course, also artist music. But.
Thank you. I think it is interesting to sort of, rather than sort of temper and harmonic notes, sort of embrace them. So you say hearing a B sharp slightly sharper than a C, for instance.
Yes. No. The B sharp has to be lower than the C. The D double flat would be higher. So that's the most tricky thing when you are reading Johnston's music, Johnston's scores, that the accidentals, the sharp and the flat, they are not a half tone, they are only 7 1/10. So that's really hard to read at the beginning. So, but this confrontation of different enharmonic meanings, I think that's one of the key moments in the early Johnston. At the end, no, but at the beginning.
Any more questions or comments? I think Navid has a, okay.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Marc, for this great presentation. It was really fascinating. I wonder if you had already the chance to look in the Ben Johnston papers, his archival materials at Northwestern University in Chicago in the US, and if you have, has it been useful to your research? I'm curious to know.
Yes, I was there twice, but the second time the library was closed because they have mold problems. So yeah, that's not funny. But I could copy the first year all the scores and all the sketch materials, and that's really helpful. So to understand more at the beginning of his work, not at the end, but at the beginning, that's to see this, how he's dealing with dodecaphony and microtonal tuning. That's really hard to understand, and the sketches are really helpful there. I hope that I can go a third time to Chicago to see more stuff, because Johnston wrote really, I think, thousands of letters, but the time was too short to copy them too. So perhaps I will join Eleni in Chicago. That would be great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions in the group, comments? Otherwise, Marc, really congratulations. I have a question about if you have any information from the performers, from these experiences, if how has been, I don't know who played, actually I didn't pay attention, I don't know if it was written. And also these experiences, if you have any, if there are any difference between, for example, the string quartet number 4, where every variation has a system, and the string quartet number 5, where these come together. And to me, it sounds, yesterday we were talking a little bit about this topic in some comments, especially at the end of the day. And to me, sounds much better number 5. I don't know if you have any information about these experiences or any comments from your side.
Well, the first question, that are recordings, not the last piece, not the I Concentrate on You, but all the other ones played by the Kepler Quartet. So they realized all the 10 string quartets, even the 7th, which is I think nearly unplayable. It's really hard to play. And I spoke with one guy of the quartet, but in a how can I say, in a difficult situation, because it was the celebration of life of Ben Johnston after his death, and that's not it's not the occasion to go really deep in in this topic. But I'm in contact. I really like the quartet number 5. I think that's my favorite piece, because it's really deep. And number 4 is for me, but that's really personal. Is it's really brilliant how he wrote this piece. But it's, for me, it's too much in heaven. So, I like number 5, that hell is always present, even in the U-tonal sections. But hell is, you can feel hell will come back, and really this and the relationship in number 5 to Debussy is very strong, and perhaps that's why I'm really like number 5 more. And more, number 4 is in a 7th limit, so that's much more. Well, you have less possibilities to make it sound different than when you use a certain limit. So perhaps that's why. That's and I checked out I built on my computer some parts of the pieces to really to control if the intonation is done well. And I have to say, the Kepler quartets, they work really hard. So you will not find mistunings. That's really amazing how good they play these pieces.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question to Manfred Stanke. I don't understand why they are always using vibrato playing the string instruments. When we are playing in microtonal music and we have always this woo, that makes it really hard to control.
Maybe the problem is if you really reduce the vibrato to zero, then you have a kind of computer sound. And since Ben worked together with the Keplers, he's sitting at the sofa and enjoying the music. He wanted to enjoy it, and he wanted us to enjoy music. And, a little kind of flash thing added to the pure mathematics is kind of wonderful for the music, and music needs it. If we play later, I will get my viola and play a little bit. It's very natural to somehow overcome these huge problems of really perfect just intonation to come into the proper sound via a little vibrato. So I think it's very natural on stringed instruments, and it's not much. And sometimes, of course, it's the kind of romantic soul of Ben, which he lets them go. So maybe this is a kind of possible answer to this.
Okay, thank you very much.
Wow, thank you. And we still have time for a last question. And I mean, if anyone would like to ask or say any comments? Okay, I'm very curious because for me, microtonality, I mean, first, I didn't give Ben Johnston's music the attention it really deserves. I mean, I heard his music at some point of my life, but it's not very fresh in my mind, unfortunately. But now, for me, microtonality serves actually as a bridge to go to folk music in a way. And then I'm getting some fresh information from Ben Johnston again, and I see this of the blues, the popular music. Mr. Manfred Stanke mentioned also popular music. So I wish I could know a little bit more if also in his mind he's trying to use microtonality in this direction into folk music.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. Yes, for sure. The accusation of eclecticism. He confronted that that's not his idea to copy pieces, but really to hear in a, as Matthew Willis told us yesterday, this frustration about the equal temperament. And to make music here in a fresh new way. That I think that at the end, and that's right. And we would be loved. We would like to be loved of our audience, but he really made this bridge from a very complex music to a wide public. Perhaps that's very American. I don't know. I was twice there. I have no idea about the US. But for me, as a European, that's at the beginning it was very far away from my own thinking about my own music. But for him, it was so clear to deal with folk music and with Schoenberg in the same moment. That's for him no problem. So, and that's fascinating. Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, Mark. I'm watching the time.
Yeah.
I thank you very much.
Thank you.
Your great presentation and this great discussion. At some point, I will write some more comments. I would have another thing in my mind. But now, if you allow,
can I say only one sentence? I have to say sorry because I have to leave. I have to participate on a Prüfung, and because I stopped the festival will be from Friday to Sunday. That's why it's not misinterest. So sorry that I quit now.
Yeah, good luck with the examinations. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, great. So we continue with the first block of the second day. And I would like to introduce you to Mr. Gerhard Klösch from Austria. And Gerhard Klösch was born in Austria in 1946. He studied mathematics and physics in Vienna and worked as a teacher and programmer. In his private life, he made music intensely and played several instruments. Since 1983, he has been concerned with microtonality and researched in detail the mathematical relationships between numbers and music. From this, he developed his own pure tone instrument with extensive sound and application possibilities, the so-called sliding keyboard. Gerhard Klösch presented the basics of this new instrument as early as 1985 at the Ecmelic Symposium in Salzburg. It was back then Mikrotöne. It's really a great honor to have him again. Due to the further development of the modern electronic instrument, it will now be possible for him to present at least a partial variant of his instrument in 2021, the construction of a digitalized sliding keyboard in cooperation with an instrument manufacturer is currently being pursued. Sponsors are being sought to support this project. So please welcome Gerhard Klösch, Schiebetastatur. Again, we still have time.
Of the sliding keyboard, Schiebetastatur, is relatively old. It arose from my preoccupation with pure mood in 1983. In 1985, at the first Ecmelic Symposium in Salzburg, I presented it, but at that time only as a model without sound output. At that time, it was not yet possible for me to realize it. Today, however, with the new technical means, I have succeeded in a partial realization, which I would like to present here. The sliding keyboard is a pure tonal keyboard. The concept of pure tonality can best be explained by the string divisions, as the Greek philosopher Pythagoras already showed in 500 BC on the monochord. Instead of the monochord, I use a cello. If you shorten the string by half, the tone becomes 1 octave higher. So, simple string divisions correspond to consonant intervals. If you add the other divisions, a third, quarter, fifth, sixth, and so on, you get the overtone row. The opposite of string division is multiplication. If we begin with a short string length and form the multiples, the double, triple, quadruple, fivefold, then we get the undertone row. combining division and multiplication, that is overtone and undertone series, you get all fractional numbers. And so you also have the definition of pure tonality. Pure tonal music consists of tones with rational frequencies or rational string divisions, which is equivalent. A rational number is a fractional number. However, the distribution of the tones on the monochord is impractical because the distances between the octaves are getting smaller and smaller. Our pitch perception, however, is more in line with the fact that the distances between the octaves are the same size. Therefore, we will prefer this scale. If the pitch is increased by 1, that is 1 octave, the frequency is doubled, that is 2 times. So that pitches 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 correspond to the frequencies 1, 2, 4, 8, 6, and 32. Generally speaking, the pitch n corresponds to the frequency 2 high n. Mathematically expressed, the frequency is 2 high pitch. The logarithm function is the inverse of the power function. So you can also write this formula like this. The pitch is the 2 logarithm of the frequency. So if you add all numbers to the previous scale, which contains only octave tones, you get the logarithmic scale of the integer frequencies, musically expressed the pitches of the overtone series. So this is the logarithmic scale of the integer frequencies, or musically speaking, the pitches of the overtone series. It matches quite well with the piano. But not exactly. The pitches of the pure intervals, except the octaves, are always irrational numbers. Irrational means not representable by a fractional number. However, this means that no octave division, be it by 12, 53, 72 and so on, can exactly meet pure intervals, but can at most come close to them. This led me to invent a keyboard that is not based on octave divisions. Let's look again at the overtone series in its logarithmic form. My idea was now to assign a button to each overtone. Let's start with the overtones 4 to 6, which form the major triad. Let's assign to tone 4, to the fundamental tone, a square button. To tone 5, that is the third, a triangular button. To tone 6, to the fifth, a round button. for the septime tone, I choose a drop-shaped symbol. Tone 8 is already the octave shifted of 4, and all octave-related tones receive the same symbol. So 8 also gets a square like 4 again. Gets a triangle again because it's 2 times 5, and so on. In the octave range from 8 to 16, the tones 9, 11, 13, 15 are added, which I will no longer represent with a special symbol, but only with a kind of point-shaped button. And so on. All is still moved to the lower octave ranges, and thus you get the tone bar, Tonleiste. The tone bar contains all tones from the octave range from 8 to 16, and all octave shifted ones of them. That is, it contains the entire overtone series. This overtone bar, Overtonleiste, contains all overtones from 1 to 16, but you can also turn it over and get all the undertones from 1 to 16. In order to be able to distinguish it better, it also displayed differently in color, in the reverse colors. So that is the undertone bar, Untertonleiste. The overtone bar contains the major triad, which are the notes 4, 5 and 6, or fundamental 3rd and 5th. Conversely, the undertone series contains a quarter, a fifth, a sixth, which forms the minor triad. Therefore, I call the overtone bar also major bar, Dur-Leiste, after the major triad, and the undertone bar I also call minor bar, Moll-Leiste, after the minor triad. With these tone bars I have combined the advantages of the monochord, namely pure intervals, and the piano keyboard, namely equal octave distances. The tone bars could not yet be built, but I will demonstrate how they work with a paper model. One assigns a frequency to the fundamental tone of the bar. The overtone series from the second overtone sounds like this. the major triad, with septim, with non, the same with the undertone series, the same fundamental tone ascent. 2, 3, the minor triad with septim. However, the keyboard only reaches its real potential by combining several bars. I want to show that first by the major bars. If you add a second major bar, they are initially tuned the same. But if I now want to have the second bar a fifth higher than the first, then I move it so that its fundamental tone is above the fifth of the first bar. Then the transfer key is pressed, which causes the pitch of the first pressed key to be transferred to the second pressed key. Now both are the same. But this means that the second triad is a fifth higher than the first. They are therefore in the relationship between tonic and dominant. If you add the septim, you get the dominant seventh chord. If you compare that to piano keyboard and take the C as the fundamental tone, the tonic chord would be C, E, G, and the dominant sept chord with non would be G, H, D, F, A. If you take a third bar and move it down a fifth, you have a triad that is 1/5 lower, the subdominant. If you compare with the piano keyboard, then can you see you have two different F. The subdominant F and the dominant F, like with the A. They are different. This means that we can already get into the microtones with the simplest musical structures. We could simply turn the whole thing around now. Now we would have the opposite ratio. However, the inverted bass should be colored the other way around, namely minor bass. By turning over, all ratios are reversed. Major becomes minor, dominant becomes subdominant. We have the minor triad again. And the subdominant with septime. It is also called minor triad with sixth adjective. And the subdominant now becomes the dominant, minor dominant. But the quint relations are not everything you can represent with the sound bass. Particularly interesting is the combination of major and minor bass. If you place EJ the fifth on the fundamental note of the minor bar, you have the conventional C major, C minor.
C, E, C, S,
If you place EJ the third on the fifth of the minor bar, it is also vice versa, fifth on third, because of the symmetry. Then you have the third relationship. Here the famous Tristan chord can also be explained. It consists of a lower seventh chord which passes into an upper seventh chord. So these two tones are the same. The other two go down in parallel. But you can also create very small micro intervals. For example, if you put the fundamental tone on the third, you have both third relationship but if you compare the two tones, the large whole tone 8 to 9 and here's the small whole tone 9 to 10. The two differ only slightly. It is a micro interval. Another possibility is to use the 11th and 13th overtone. (11) and 13. These are the two tones left and right of the fifth. You can add these tones to the sept-non chord. This results in interesting combinations. This is research area for a long time. Since the realization of the keyboard is not yet possible, I have been looking for other solutions and found them in a limb instrument. The instrument, originally developed by Roger Limb in the USA, is not actually intended for microtonal music, but is versatile enough that it can also be adapted to it. It has 200 keys, 8 rows of 25 keys each. The tone bar has 8 tones per octave, which gives 3 octaves. 8 times 3 is 24 plus a final tone. Combined with the program Mikrosynth, a microtonal synthesizer, with which it is possible to assign any frequency to each key. I have the tool with which I can achieve a preliminary solution. I calculate the frequencies with a self-written computer program, FreqTab, like frequency table. We have 25 buttons per row. I can give them the same icons as with the tone bar, but it's not the same. On the limb bar, as I call it, all tones have the same distance, while on the tone bar they have different distances according to the pitches. The tone bar can be moved continuously, while the limb bar can only be moved in stages, depending on the key width. Despite these limitations, it is a good substitute for a real tone bar. You can play all the sounds on it. It is very good that the buttons are sensitive enough that they also respond through paper. This allows you to put a continuous scale over it. A continuous scale, again with sliding bars, similar to the real sliding keyboard. Now to the computer program. It has several options. I choose the one for outputting lean tone bass. You enter the desired bar positions. Here they are already pre-filled. And the program outputs a protocol, and at the same time it fills the frequency table. On the printed protocol you can see, among other things, the sound names with the corresponding cent values. For example, the 2F, which we already know, the subdominant F and the deeper dominant F, and yet another species. So, the F is here at this bar position in 3 versions. The H would even be present in 5 versions here, so it's quite microtonal here. Once you have calculated and entered the table, you call the program Mikrosynth. And the lean instrument is already functional. You adjust the bar positions on the lean instrument. It is cheap if you do it additionally on the real tone bars, the paper model, in order to be able to compare. The fundamental tone is inscribed, you see? The two are on the top of each other, although they are not the same high. On the real tone bars, you can see that one is slightly higher than the other. The same with these twos. Auch die beiden sind auch die Tonleiste, sieht man, dass es zweite tiefer ist. Superimposed tones are usually similarly high. With the 11th and 13th overtone, you can achieve amazing effects. You can also set the device to recording and use it as a trainer for musical instruments. Or fantasize to pure accords. Thank you for your attention.
Wow, thank you so much. Congratulations. Video, bravo. Thank you. Thank you very much for your wonderful work. And in this beautiful video, it's fantastic. I think it's one of the best video about microtonal music that I have ever seen. It's really very clear, all the steps, very well edited. And I have to personally thank you so much for the translation that at the end you did it yourself. And I'm sure I wouldn't have done so good as you did with the translation in this edition. Thank you so much, and congratulations. We have still 5 minutes, a little bit shorter, for the questions. And Hans Gunther has a question, please.
Yeah, thank you for this presentation. It was very beautiful, very clear. For imagination, this harmonic overtone series, what of course for a traditional trained musician is something like an alien, but of course it isn't. It is the reality. It is nothing irreal, and I'm just wondering, maybe Juhani can answer that. I was imagining that now there is this wonderful keyboard, the Lumatone came out, and I think might it be easy to program something similar on the Lumatone if you code the different harmonics from 8 to 16 in different colors, and then you can switch a button, and then you can make these modulations or with this shifting the bars virtually on the Lumatone. I saw that maybe in the Lumatone has to go a little bit diagonal, because then you have the keys adjacent to each other.
Yeah, well, sure, yes. You can.
I think know the Lumatone keyboard, but für mich ist es besser, die lineare Anordnung von dem Lin-Instrument.
Ja, aber wenn man das Lumatone, da geht die Linearität ein bisschen diagonal, weil das an sich für was anderes gedacht ist. Aber man könnte es doch auch. Ja, und Juhani wollte das kommentieren. Entschuldigung.
Yes, I agree with Mr. Gerhard that for this purpose of using the undertone and overtone series, like in a monochord or in the sliding keyboard, the instrument seems to be an excellent solution. It is possible to use just intonation tunings or mappings in Lumatone, of course, but they tend to be sort of scale systems. Those work best because it's a hexagonal generalized keyboard, and I think the linear approach is very good for the purpose.
Yes.
And I think the instrument is an excellent solution. I would have a suggestion. Of course, you have already written a completely working software for mapping the notes, well, the tones to the instrument. But the same manufacturer, Aaron Hunt, who has made the synthesizer, the microsynth that you use, he has software which is also very inexpensive or almost free, called Universal
tuning editor. Yes, I know it.
And I recommend that because it also has the piano sounds and so on, and it has a dedicated editor for the instrument. So you can simply there's a graphic editor, so you can simply type the ratios in on the keys on your instrument, and you can actually play the instrument in real time. So you can immediately hear the effect. But but perhaps your software already that you wrote yourself already does what you want. So maybe this is not necessary. But anyway, it's a nice piece of software that would work very well with the instrument because it has this editor.
Oh, yes.
Another about the instrument. Have you considered using the? Doesn't it have colored LED lights? So you could actually, instead of your triangulars and squares and symbols, if you used color for the overtone, have you considered that?
Yes, but aber ich kann sie. Es ist mir noch zu schwierig, das umzusetzen.
It's too difficult to set. I'm really sorry. I have to interrupt this wonderful conversation. We have to continue. And Mr. Gerhard Klösch, thank you very much. It's a great honor. For further questions, please use the chat so we can answer that. And so if you need translation, Gerhard, we can translate. Otherwise, I can also copy the questions, and we can solve them any of these days. Okay, thank you very much. Bravo.
Thank you.
And so we will continue now. We are very happy to have as well composer Pascale Criton and Paul Bazin. They are going to present Pascale Criton's micro-tempered universes. Pascale Criton studied composition with Ivan Wisnegradsky, Gerhard Grisey, and Jean-Etienne Marie. Sorry about my French. She received electroacoustic training at the CIRM, International Center for Musical Research in Nice, from 1980 to 1982, as well as in musical computer course for composers at the IRCAM in Paris in 1986. She earned a master's in music with Daniel Charles at the University of Paris 8 in 1987, a postgraduate degree under the direction of Hughes Dufour, doctoral training in music and musicology of the 20th century at the IRCAM, EHES, and CNRS in Paris, 1993, and a doctorate with distinction, 1999. Since 1980, Pascale Criton has explored the variability of sound through instrumental techniques, variable tunings, and the spatialization of listening. A specialist of microtonality, she uses specific tuning quarter, 12, and 16 tones on the violin, cello, guitar, piano, and accordion, along with orchestral instruments and electronics. A significant catalog of chamber music and works for ensemble experiment the technical and expressive possibilities of these intervallic spaces. She has also developed a new form of concert, in situ, installations and sonotactile apparatuses, in which reorient the listening experience towards an echo-sensitive receptivity. Criton's music is characterized by a flexible approach using pitch, timbre, noise, and acoustical phenomena to stimulate the emergence of unexpected sonorities. She's currently in research residency at Artsoy Studios, Valenciennes, and Bordeaux University Sonotact Scream Labrie. And Paul Bazin earned a PhD degree from McGill University in 2020, where his research focused on Ivan Wisniewski's musical legacy. He holds a Bachelor of Music in Voice from the Université de Sherbrooke and a master's degree in musicology from the Université de Montréal, for which his research concentrated on the analysis of Serge Garane's art zones. In spring of 2016, this research on Serge Garane obtained the Socan Foundation Moose-Kahn Prize for Research in Canadian Music. With funding from many institutions, Paul Bazin gave a number of presentations and authored several texts for the journals Circuit, Musique Contemporaine, Les Cahiers de la SQRM, and Intersections, the Routledge Encyclopedia of Modernism, and chapter in the recent book Artistic Migration and Identity. In 2019, he co-edited the issue of Circuit with Professor Robert Hasegawa from McGill University. Beyond his academic pursuits, Paul Bazin acts as administrative coordinator and editorial secretary for music journal Circuit, Musiques Contemporaines, in addition to working for many institutions and examples as a cultural worker. So please, ladies and gentlemen, welcome, very much welcome to Pascale Criton, Paul Bazin, Pascale Criton's Micro-Tempered Universes.
Thank you, Augustine. Am I allowed to share my screen right away?
Yes, of course, please.
Okay, thank you. Here we go. I guess everybody should see this by now.
And do I appear too?
Yes, we see you. We see you both of you very
okay.
Well.
I don't see that we see us. Okay. Thank you, Augustine, for inviting us and for gathering all these very interesting people in this symposium. Thank you very much for this organization.
Very welcome.
So I change a little the title, Variable Differences Process. And we are going to talk together, Paul Bazin, who is doing such a good, interesting works on microtonal composers, such as Bruce Mather and me and some others. And, well, up to Paul.
Thank you, Pascale, and good morning, everyone, or at least good day. Here it's morning. So I invite you all to grab a good set of headsets, just because we're going to listen to very fine-grained music in 16th tone. So perhaps it's better if you can listen to all these very fine-grained variations. I'm very happy and thrilled to be here with Pascale this morning to discuss minute selection of her works throughout all of her career, starting in the 1980s, mostly scored for instruments in 16th tones. Either they're built in 16th tones using scordaturas. So let's dive right in. So in your case, Pascale, the discovery and exploration of microtonality started in the 1970s, mostly when you got in touch with Ivan Wisniewski, Jean-Etienne Marie, and Gerhard. So could you first tell us just a little bit about how you discovered all these different sorts of temperaments or fine-grained tunings, which are very unlikely at that time?
Well, there is undoubtedly at the beginning, I think, a kind of sensitive disposition and interest in slight transformations. The intonation of voices, for example, have been an important source of attention for me, as well as surrounding sounds. But more objectively, I had access to the piano conceived by Julian Carrillo at the end of the 1970s, thanks to my teacher, Jean-Etienne Marie, who was close friend to the Mexican composer, a pioneer of microtonal music. And after the 1958 World's Fair in Brussels, Carrillo had given him two pianos, one in third tone, the other in 16th tone, that remains in Paris. And it's an upright piano, which has 97 keys and thus covers an octava from C4 to C5. And the soundboard is designed for this tension. And this instrument gave me the possibility to get familiar with this very dense temperament of 96 division by octava.
And so could you tell us how you first managed to explore this new instrumental territory, which was very unfamiliar to you by the very early days when you discovered the Carrillo piano?
Well, I was captivated by the sound of the piano first. And the first piece I wrote was Mémoire for this instrument, and it's in 1982, sorry. And it's somehow a kind of exploration of the possibilities of the instrument. And as it is possible to develop a micro harmony inferior to the semitone, and to compose and decompose sound relation inferior to the quarter tone. And I took this as, 16th tone interval are very different from more usual intervals, which can be heard for themselves, can be sung, can be delimited. These intervals of 16ths are, may I say, relative intervals, adjustment factors that allow very sensitive variability of the pitch. And these minute differences also modify the timbral structures and give access to acoustic phenomena. I've been really interested straight on all these aspects, and I enjoyed working on almost imperceptible transformation, such as dilating or contracting normal intervals, such as third or quinth. And this is maybe kind of a reference to Vishnegradsky, who worked on dilated and contracted octavas. And talking about Vishnegradsky, I've been close to Vishnegradsky and working with him too, another pioneer of microintervals. And I could write a book, several books, and articles on his work of this very great microtonalist pioneer.
So this piano was a chance for you to start and explore these sonorities which you discovered with them.
Yes, and I did acoustic research on this instrument, which with the collaboration of Instrumental Acoustic Laboratory at IRCAM at that time in the end of 80s. And I also worked at that time on kind of first models of piano synthesizers, numerizing with very short interval strings. And little by little, I wrote several pieces with it, including the piano and including more and more open, high quality synthesis. Because in the 80s, it was such a discovering of the complexity of sound, in which pitch is a kind of factor that alterates together many equilibrium in the sound structure. It's not only a scale matter. For me, it became like a kind of tool that can be worked as a woven, as a grid that is more or less dense, more or less stretched.
So I'll propose that we listen to an excerpt from Mémoire in which everybody will be able to hear these differences in pitch inflection and its impact on timbral perception.
Okay.
I think this example very well illustrates this dilation and dilatation of different sizes of intervals. It's very nice to be able to tie it to Vishnegradsky's own theories in that specific instance. And now, Pascale, this work is the very first to appear on your catalog, starting in 1982, and is also the first of a series, a long series of works written for this specific piano, which goes all the way up to the mid-90s. I'd be curious to hear you a little more about how you eventually came to translate this specific temperament from a fixed instrument, which has a very specific build, onto instruments which can use cordaturas like guitar.
Yes, then the problem was how to prolong it, to keep on working on this temperament. And by chance, I met Didier Achour, a guitarist, and he was looking for Carrillo pieces for for guitar. Then he heard that these pieces for the piano, and 2 weeks later he called me and said, "I think I have an idea how to tune the guitar to get temperament in 96 divisions." So his solution was to have 4 identical strings with a difference apart of 1/16th tone, and thus to have a quarter tone fretted instrument. This has been our first way to keep on, and I wrote really quite several pieces for guitars tuned that way, also in 12th tone. And the fact is that when this tune upsets the usual references point, and more than adjustment scordatura, this scordatura is practically like a prepared instrument. It's what I call a zero instrument in a way, because it's no longer possible to play known pieces. And so,
but you still have the frets as a reference point, right?
Yes, and it's necessary to rebuild a technique and elaborate appropriate features and way of playing, which is a musical sensitivity that is at stake, I think, because it's matter to stretch. It's the possibility to take time inside one tone. You have 16 steps, so you deal with something else about the sound, but also with the energy, with the melodic or microharmony features. Maybe we can hear a bit of La Ritournelle et le Galop, which was a 1996 piece.
So here we go. I'm always quite impressed at how, while listening to this piece, the very fact that we're listening to such fine scale details in pitch inflection or in just slight variations between different attacks of a single sonority, actually on our own listening skills, we listen to more details, be it either in the resonance of single pitches or to the other extreme, to the very noises produced by the performance on the strings or even on the wood of the instrument.
Yes, in this except there is not these noisy, in fact, effects that, but all what is possible with the offset of the strings, that it favors kind of echo effects, diffraction, fragmentation, but also it brings some degrees of it maybe brings some degrees of roughness, what we may call granulation effects. And this is also how, for me, in these 90s, the conception of sound is also very nourished by the spectralism research that really gather the spectrum from every components, that is opening to all the equilibrium that we may find in what Griset called instrumental synthesis in his construction, the writing of it, the conception of such mélange, combination. Yeah.
Now, if I may push forward, we talked about how the difference between the piano and the guitar in the use of 16-tone temperament was at least in part due to how the guitar offered a more sort of ground zero level of instrumental performance, yet we still had the frets. What is interesting is that later on in the 2010s, you started working with bowed instruments, which offered you an even more ground zero level since you removed the frets from the instrument. So did this have an impact on the type of sonorities or instrumental performance techniques that you were searching for?
Yes, then some musicians were interested to develop this research in sensitivity and techniques, both linked, gesture, and of course we first did for violin, and a violin tuned in also 96 division by octava, which means also to put 3-4 times identical strings, and to develop the gesture that are that may take expressiveness, and also relying to kind of how can I say, morphodynamic. It's the whole sound that is in question in this tuning, and it involves a lot of for the bow strings. We started really to involve a kind of subjectivity of the player, and to develop diagrammatic style, what we call style, which is not a music that is so much pitched or metric, but rather diagrammatic. This is, for instance, a little profile, which is not diagrammatic because we cannot play with that. But we delimitate ways of playing, and their extension, their possibilities in a very gestural dynamic writing. Maybe we can hear an excerpt of Bossuet's Impulse.
And so when dealing with the subjectivity of the performer itself, or himself or herself, you elaborate this whole new approach to instrumental performance, but also to listening. Am I right?
Yes, of course, because the more we want, we want to control these very slight differences, whether they are purely pitch, whether they are micro harmony combination, whether they are acoustic phenomena, which are maybe 3-level, but not only, and timbre, I would add, and all the timbre spectrum from noise to overtones. It demands really to develop a listening. The particular listening is, for me, there is a listening of what exists, and the listening, the perception, as we define it, something exists, we listen to it, or to listen to bring something to existence, which is a kind of active listening that I tried to use in few pieces.
In a later piece, like Wonder Steps, you once told me that accordionist Fanny Vicence told you that it actually amounted to a certain sort of listening virtuosity.
Yes. Yes, for the piece I wrote for them and in collaboration with them, because they have accordions that are tuned in quarter tone. In fact, here we start from the quarter tone, and we developed techniques that allow to go inferior of the quarter tone and to go into very slight fluctuation, so that in order to produce interferences, speed of beatings, to be really at the threshold of sound phenomena. And with the both instruments are in fact building together what could be called the in-between sound. They don't really play sound to be heard. They play sound to make hearable the in-between sound. So they often say that they feel like being only one instrument. It's very striking, especially because these interferences play with are active with the modes, the acoustical modes of the room, of the place where it's played, and it may really ask to deal with something that may happen in a very uncertain dimension, and to adjust, in fact, by ear all the time with these acoustical realities that are really close to micro differences.
Excuse me, can we go to questions in 2 minutes, please?
Okay,
yeah.
we hear some of the music.
Absolutely.
5 minutes at least. 5 minutes we need.
I must say, I always loved how this work brings us to consider the sounds being played by the instruments, not like being the goal of the music itself, but being the mean to produce these extra sonorities which do not appear on the score. Only the mean to get there, the tool to get there. Especially with this instrument in quarter tone, we can think we're far remote from a 16-tone division of the octave, but at the same time, with the bands which are allowed by the instrument, we're far reaching out of fourth tone and of quarter tone, and we're actually nearing the control of every single hertz in the frequency.
Yes, Paul. You're right. Thank you.
The final word's yours.
Oh, no, I'm open to questions and listeners, and thank you all for being at listening and here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pascale Criton and Paul Bazin. Congratulations for this for sharing these very inspiring stories with us. I'm sorry that I have to interrupt this beautiful theme going on, and I would like to ask the group if they have any questions for you. Otherwise, I would go myself.
Okay.
Hans Gunther, please.
Very quick technical question. How hard it was to tune one of this accordion?
How what? Sorry.
How hard it was, or how complicated it was to tune one of this accordion differently from normal?
Yeah, it's not one, it's both. They are both in quarter tone, and they are built, they are designed in quarter tone. It's quarter tone accordions.
It's on a quarter tone accordion. I was automatically thinking one is a normal and other shifted like the Vyshny-Gradsky piano. So
yes, it could be, but no, it's possible. It's like having four keyboards. They have both one and a quarter tone.
Now I remember there existing quarter tone accordions. They have
yes
in Finland.
Yes, too. Yes, and Fanny and Jean-Étienne Sotti really developed a very big repertoire for their accordions. It's like 70 pieces in a very short time. Young composers, and they are really bright.
One question is: are both instruments acoustic instruments? No MIDI accordions. Is that true? Acoustic instruments.
It's
wonderful.
Purely acoustic instruments, and they really play with the acoustic modes, you know, and that's what they hear. They listen to it has what I call perception action listening. That means that following what's happening, it's like you are on Vale with on the sea. You know, you have to take the energy and to manage the forces, the strength relations, the forces. Yeah, and there is not at all any transformation, not even microphone. It's just acoustic. And I think that what we heard, there was some pluck. Did you have pluck?
Yes.
Which doesn't exist, in fact. No, the pluck were coming.
Yeah, this gave me the imagination that it's electronically done. Okay, it's not. Yes, yeah.
I don't know where pluck were artifacts. I think here. Yeah.
Especially, maybe we should specify that this was a live recording, so there's no manipulation, no editing of the track. I think
it happened very much when you change the pitch. It was very interesting to listen to. When the pitch changed, I heard this plop.
Should not. You can. I think you find there is some recordings of this that can be available. I think on the net, especially on IRCAM link, where you can see them were playing. You can see how it's done, and it's explained too.
Super.
Yes, there is a presentation by Bob Azegawa in Spectralism series. So your question was the change come with the clock? No, it should not.
Yeah. It's very interesting to have an additional comment or question to you. You kind of work in a hybrid mode. You compose, you write, but then the players, they recreate or they create what your intentions are or what their intentions are. It's very interesting for me to see this hybrid kind, being a composer and being a offerer of a musical material, very open material. Is that true? Is this your view also?
Yes, of course, because this is not more and more in these last pieces. This is not exactly pitch music. It's music that is made of pitch, but not only. And well, pitch have been, as we know, and have been fixed. It's a fixed position, and we have to reach this fixed point. Here, I mostly work on fuzzed and moving pitch through other effects. So, of course, it brings the attention not to be on fixity, but to be on changing. So this is written. This is conceived very clear, very precisely. We work a lot on it, but it is not the mastering of the fixity of metric and pitch, pure music. Yes, here, for instance, this is the Wonder Steps beginning, and you have, I don't know if you see my arrow. No. You have a time approximation, and there is what we have to do, which is one accordion, the other. This is their below go and forth, and the below all the time is giving the time. In fact, from one below to the other, it's completely structured. It's the fixity is there. It is in the necessity of the below, which can slightly change following the acoustic of the room. In a dry room, the below has to be faster developed, and in a more resonant room, you can have a much more slow below movement. So, in fact, we are in a very precise writing, but in which time doesn't play the same role as in metric music. May I say something like that? which give to the musician, to the player, a kind of liberty, but not so much, because it's also a very a strong control.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. I'm sorry I have to interrupt. Juhani had another question. Is it possible, okay, if it's short one, we go for it, otherwise we can write it.
Very short. Thank you so much for the wonderful music. I missed if the two quarter-tone accordions are tuned the same, or are there some interval apart?
No, they are tuned the same.
Okay.
They are tuned the same, but they have two keyboards that are tuned apart.
Yes.
From each. Yeah.
Oh, is that what the mechanism is? Because in the Finnish quarter-tone accordion, it's not like two 12-tone keyboards, but it's the notes are spread on so that if you play an octave, it's a tritone on the instrument.
Mm-hmm. In there is the total 24 division by octava on the whole range. They have all they are each accordion.
Yes.
Has the total quarter tones.
Yes, I understood. But I thought you said that for both hands there's a
one. Yes, one is
tone. Is it 12 tone for both hands and then a quarter tone difference?
Yes.
Okay, because that's different from the Finnish quarter tone accordion, which is also full 24, but it has it's a button accordion for both hands, and it has
here too.
Yeah. Okay, but it's so that if you play an octave on one hand, you hear a tritone. So it's a different setup, different pattern.
Yes. You hear a what? Maybe I didn't hear what you said.
So the octave is squeezed too.
Okay.
Yeah. So
you can have information, I think, on their site. Their name is XAMP. XAMP.
The French accordion.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Veli Kujala is the accordionist who has the Finnish quarter-tone accordion.
Mm. Okay, thank you very much. Congratulations. Wonderful presentation.
Thank you very much.
Great to have you. And if it's okay for all the group, we're going to have a little break. And so to stretch legs, get a cup of coffee, and I will see you all at 3:30 Austrian time in 25 minutes, please.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye. See you soon.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.